Hello and welcome to Brown the Shits, a podcast about why you don't see them white dog turds no more.
I'm disappointed that this episode went from visible boy penis to no penis at all. To be honest,
Now that I've experienced it, it's a step down.
because the thumbnail led me to believe it would be so much more.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those ones where the cover artist or the thumbnail artist, the thumbnail picker kind of went with something that I do feel is almost deliberately misleading.
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some bits here, but if it is not an unfair conclusion to come to looking at the thumbnail for this and think, oh, okay, because it is almost exactly Lawnmower Man. The thumbnail is almost exactly Lawnmower Man. If someone told me that like 4 Australian kids made a version of Lawnmower Man in their shed for like no money, I'd 100% believe you. I'd still be amazed, but like, kids know what Lawnmower Man is.
yeah.
This is, of course, ever felt like this. I'm Gabriel Twist. With me is my wall stalk sidekick, Amber Twist. And the original story, Lawnmower Man, was about a guy looking out his window and seeing a maniac running around his lawn eating the grass. It had little, if anything, to do with virtual reality.
I feel they missed out.
I do too. Because I find Stephen King's at his best when he's doing bizarre side work. Otherwise, he just keeps writing, and I don't think anyone's been brave enough to tell him to stop.
It is one of those points where it's like, like Lucas with the original trilogy where they were like, no, George, no. And it made it better. So like Stephen just locks himself in a room and then writes 8 novels a day and is like, one of these will stick.
That was Cujo. Doesn't remember writing it.
So that's bad shit.
Coke and booze. So anyway, this episode is UMI.
It's actually like on the Amazon page, it's spelt like actually YOUAMI, but in the opening, it says it's the letters UMI.
Like you were getting a text in like 1998.
Yeah.
And you used to get charged for the amount of characters you received.
I want to know who writes these openings. I want to know who comes up with them because sometimes they're like spot on to the episode and you're like, oh yeah, okay. And other times it's like, what?
Yeah, like there's a thing, I do have that sort of idiot instinct to sort of press on edges. And like, if you let me get away with stuff like this, I am going to escalate wildly because I have to know what the edge is. I have to know, okay, like, it's okay to do the whirling penis idea, but it's like, because if you tell me it's okay to do a flying penis, and then you tell me that it's not okay to do a talking vagina, I'm going to be a bit miffed, and I'm nearly 100% certain. Having not seen all of them, I'm nearly 100% certain there isn't a talking vulva episode.
I don't believe so.
Around the Twist coming up. And yeah, the opening, the cold opening for this is like, and again, at this point, I'm still thinking it's a virtual reality episode, because again, the thumbnail is someone screaming in a VR headset.
Yeah.
And something, all right, it's got to be like a VR fucking beach. Pete's there. He's skipping a stone. He looks over. White Fiona's there. And like, I'm thinking, all right, maybe there's like a virtual Fiona and she wants to like kill the original Fiona or something. And then just Pete sprouts a Gribble head.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, Gribble Senior too. So it's just, my nightmare made flesh of like one day spontaneously sprouting Mark Mitchell heads. And the Mark Mitchell head is like, and I think counter to the plot of the episode, happy with the situation. Like he's kind of excited he gets to live on Pete's neck.
You know those terracotta heads that you can grow like
Chia pets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll look like Mark Mitchell.
There is a you just don't see the kind of curly haired Australian dudes that are sweaty all the time for some reason much anymore. Maybe it was climate change.
I think they lock them on trade sites.
They've been shunted off toward the trades. They all get straightened.
Because like one of my cousins has that exact blonde curly Mark Mitchell style hair.
Yeah, because it's wild. It's not like wavy. It's like Tony's hair. It is very much curly, but it's below Jufro, so it doesn't even have it doesn't have that consistency that can self-support. It's just sort of floppy, and you'll see it very commonly on a certain kind of Australian guy who looks like he's been drinking and running all day. and just regardless of whether he's been doing either. There's just this like, it's like his head's trying to explode just to get out of the sun. Like even just the frame of like Tony here and the fucking thing, like all the kids look normal, and then Tony looks like he, has just realized he left his like secret hard drive plugged in and logged in. It's just it's such a weird thing that I don't know, maybe it's because I don't go out much. I'd pop out to more like, I don't know, public events and see if I can spot sweaty curly guys.
I feel like you'd see a lot of them at like Sexpo.
Like just trying to get free shit too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We open in a carnival and they're lined up to go into this tent. And Bronson's there with Pete and Fiona. And Bronson's being the typically annoying
because Bronson's like going, okay, so you control it with your head. And then Pete's like, no, because you control it with your head. He's like, no, you don't control it with your brain. It's virtual reality. You control it kind of like, you look around. And like Bronson, who used to be the computer kid, is just like not interested.
Which is weird.
Yeah, I kind of bummed about that because, it's not like it ever really paid off or did anything, but at least it was something, It's like, yeah, Bronson likes computers and games and stuff. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
And then, at this point, Pete's like trying to fucking do something to Fiona. So he's like, okay. And basically pays off Bronson to fuck off for a bit.
Yeah. After Bronson milks him, of course, he's like, how about you go get this? And Bronson's like, I could only go for if I got a triple chocolate shake as well. Yeah, so Pete has to give him more money.
Got to escalate a little bit. And then Pete reads from the Viking Book of Rape.
It's a common occurring theme, and I feel it's going to come up a lot. Like, I'm really excited to see what the curse is.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because after the pages are done, it's cursed then. So that's going to be fun.
At least it's building to something. And so now Fiona's in love with him. And then now here's a sentence. The carny that runs the VR tent. And it really is too. Like they found themselves a carny. He reminds me of like this guy who was at the Lawnton show, like, which is, I need to stress this, like a suburban carnival, like, because you'll get like state fairs and shit. Like the exhibition that happens in Brisbane is like a state fair, basically. And it's like, don't get me wrong, it's feral. And you'll always, every time you go, you'll collect some new rural form of diarrhea that like only cows usually get.
No, see, I don't, because I don't eat their fucking god-awful food. Like, that's mostly what does it, because of the motherfuckers having Dagwood dogs and just dipping it into the giant pot of sauce. Because like, when I say giant pot of sauce, I literally mean like an industrial-sized cooking
it's a
pot.
Bucket, yeah.
And people are just dunking it in, and it's just like, you don't know what, like some motherfucker's dunking his hands in there.
And probably.
Like, in like licking them.
And so, like, the guy there 3 years in a row, there was a dude there with like a stall, and we called him the sucked in man because he'd like spring out of his stall and like grab you like a trapdoor spider.
Oh, wow.
Try to get you to play his game when you threw darts or some shit. And there was just this bizarre mix of aggressive carny and genuine pathos that made it really hard to say no to him. And this guy wanders out to like sleazily lure you in to play his virtual reality with his rat.
Yeah, he's got a rat on his shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, I never saw a rat on a carny's shoulder that was meant to be there.
Yeah.
And so...
I'd like to see a rat with a carny on its shoulder.
And then, like, once he drags Pete into the VR hole, Gribble's already... Like, Gribble's senior.
Gribble's the champion.
Yeah, he's already, like, fucking just absolutely gunning it on the VR. And immediately I'm like, oh, okay, it's a brain swap episode. And, yeah. I was really looking forward to unbelievably clumsy year 2000 Australian children's television show depictions of virtual reality.
And it didn't deliver.
No, I got 5 seconds of an otherwise perfectly sensible fucking VR space game and relatively sensible. I mean, like, look, for the period, that's what people were doing in VR headsets. Yeah. So it's like, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, can't argue with this. And then, Fiona's outside fucking pining for Pete, and Linda's grossed
I love
out.
how Linda just walks up and is like, he's been in there for ages. And then she's like, isn't he hunky? And Linda just has like this look of, you disgust me on her face.
I mean, like, look, fair call. I don't want to hear that. Like, why would you want to hear that? Why would you want to say that?
Yeah.
Like, that's just an insane thing.
And the Gribble boy is getting impatient because they've been waiting outside for a long time.
And, decides, all right,
we're just gonna switch this mother off.
Yeah. And so the bullies go around to tinker with the fucking, power switch out the back. And, as people who've done like a little bit of, tech support and tech repair, don't tamper with electricity because it's magic. And they do that. And of course, the souls of Pete and Gribble are then swapped around using the magic of goggles. It's just plays out exactly. You see a little ball go down the tube and it's like, oh, they've been brain swapped.
I do like because they stumble out of the tent all awkward and stuff and disorientated. And because they're swapped bodies, Gribble in Pete's body goes to hug Matron. And
Pete in adult Gribble's body
goes to hug Fiona.
Yeah.
And they're all like, oh.
So I was calling that Greet and I was calling Gribble in Pete's body Pibble.
Pibble?
Yeah, so that's Gribble in Pete's body is Pibble and Pete in Gribble's body is Greet. That's what I've been going with.
That's a good. I like that.
And so, Fiona and Matron are both grossed out by this. And then the one nice thing about this episode is they both immediately realize what's happened. They're like, we've been body swapped. They go find the carny and he's like, the power's fucked, so, there's nothing I can do.
I like how they're like, when do you think it'll be fixed? Oh, probably 11 p.m. at night. And I was like, that's very specific.
Yeah, that's weirdly specific.
Like, okay. And so they agree to just, lay low and act normal until they can get back and swap.
And so Pibble doesn't want to tell anybody because Matron will have a heart attack, which is thin, but all right.
That's kind of plausible.
Yeah, like it's not the thinnest part of this episode, but it is like, all right, they had to have a reason for. They at least acknowledged that there was a reason. They wouldn't just go, hey, we've been body swapped and kind of like don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So, Pibble goes off with the twists and Greet sulks about it to Matron.
Yeah, they go to get pizza and I love that not 5 minutes have gone past and Greet is like, oh shit, I have an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And starts trying to con Tony into selling the lighthouse.
It is, like that's how you become the #1 real estate agent in Port Noranda is like, even when virtual reality swaps your brain with a 13-year-old boy, you're still on the job. That's how he got where he is today, Port Noranda. And so, Pibble's like fucking, listening to sort of boomer jazz, and Linda and Bronson storm into a costume over suggesting the family move out of the lighthouse. And he's very much playing a long game here. There's a lot of him sort of slightly lying to some parties, and he's trying to make it look like living in the lighthouse makes Pete sad. And he's not saying that we should definitely move. He's just saying, it would be nice to be normal and to live somewhere normal. But if you guys don't want to, that's okay. And then he sort of is sad. And meanwhile, fucking Greet's dancing around Gribble's room to loud rock and eating fucking popcorn and spilling it everywhere.
Wait, which one's which? I got confused.
Gribble in Pete's body is Pibble.
Gribble in
Pete in Gribble's body is Greet.
All right.
And yeah, so like this is the sum we see of Pete enjoying Gribbles' life and his nice fucking modern suburban. We see the inside of just eating Gribbles' snacks, which is really more of a Bronson thing. Like if Bronson were in Gribbles' body, I'd expect him to just be eating everything. It also just seems like a weird thing to do in general if you're trying to lay low. Like we'll go, I'm going into my home office to not be disturbed.
Yeah.
Which I 100% believe that Gribble would probably have. And, I mean, if I were Pete, I'd be concerned about Matron molesting me.
Yeah, that's high on the threat list.
Or just going, all right, you're going to see what this is about. take old Gribble Senior's body for a test run. I'm gonna get him a dick piercing.
See, now you're thinking.
Yeah. Don't let me pilot your body around because I'm gonna see what.
Do small things that aren't noticeable at first, but like once you notice, you'll be like, oh no.
So yeah, like Matron is worried. Gribble Jr. thinks something is up, which is, this is some nice continuity with Gribble Jr.'s proximity to the shenanigans. And then Greet asks Matron for frozen Mars bars.
It's just, you could just ask for Mars bars. Why are they gotta be frozen? Who's going out there freezing Mars bars?
Like, I know that was a thing, but also, like, Mars bars are kind of solid to begin with. Like, if you freeze one, you've just got, like, a rock.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's why they invented the Mars bar ice creams, which are literally a frozen Mars bar that are soft.
Yeah, like, it's got a chocolate layer over, like, some runnier caramel and, like, fucking ice cream. Because if you freeze a Mars bar, it's a fucking rock. Like, you will possibly break teeth.
Yeah.
So, Tony's talking to the family about the lighthouse because, Pete's been getting sad, and then Bronson just blames Faye for taking up more space, which is causing the discord. Which, I don't know, like, I feel is tapping a well that they finished, Like the continued squabbling between Bronson and Faye. Yeah.
It's just, I just like Tony's like, well, look, if Pete's got concerns, we all should have concerns. And it's like, you realize that there's a majority here, Tony, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, like, yeah, like, well, that statement nominally is true, but it's like, all right, yeah, Pete does, nobody else does. So, like, that's a factor of this too. This isn't just like, everyone's sad because the lighthouse is like, I don't know, haunted and making them miserable or some shit.
yeah.
And then it was at this point that I was worried. It's like, oh God, are we going to have to see like, Greet fucking trying to avoid, bedtime kisses with Matron? Fortunately, no. He's in bed and Matron is already wearing a sleep mask and snoring loudly. Although she does spoon him.
Which would be kind of traumatic.
I mean, I feel like suddenly being put into like a chubby, middle-aged, curly, sweaty dude's body, like I would find that just traumatic by itself.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, his frumpy ass wife fucking, spooning me or something is just like, that's...
You frumpy asshole! Frumpy is such a great word. I love it.
It's one of those ones that it makes no sense, but it just fits perfectly with what it's describing.
Did they call you frumpy? No, they called you clumpy. So Gribble and Pete both go back to the carnival.
Yeah, where the guy said he was going to be.
At 11 p.m. And guess what? The carnival's gone.
Oh, God. So that's why, this is why I think he was so specific. He knows that, like, they got to tidy up and be out of the fucking carnival grounds by, like, probably 10.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, come back at 11. I'll have it fixed. And he's just gone. And so, Greet's panicking because he's not enjoying really any of this. And Pibble is calm because, like, he's, enacting his incredible plan. And then Greet complains about being fat. And then Pibble asks him about some life details, and Greet threatens him to not touch Fiona if she shows up at school tomorrow.
Which is fair.
Yeah,
like,
and then,
you don't know what he's going to do. He's a despicable old man.
Time to legally fondle a 15-year-old. And so, they both go back to their not respective homes. And the music that, like, fucking Pibble is listening to that's meant to be, like, Gribbles' taste in music sounds exactly like Banjo-Kazooie stage music. It's like this off-licensed fucking, background jazz that you could just use for free. And the entire time he's laying in bed listening to it, I can just see, like, Nintendo 64 textures. And then Greet gets into bed next to Matron, who is sobbing quietly in the dark. She thinks something's wrong with her husband.
Which is, that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. It's going to get worse, though. And so the next shot's at school, and it's Pibble on a cellular phone. A classic flip. Chasing down the whereabouts of the fucking carnival. I'm impressed that he because think about right now, like how would you track a fucking carnival? What would the thing you'd call
I would not
first?
know.
Like I feel like
I'd call probably the whatever
the number
the
on there's
city's
probably got to be a thing, yeah.
the city, mayor office or whatever the fuck that plans these sorts of things and
Yeah,
approves
like I
them.
feel like you could look it up on the internet and you'd get like things that are supposed to be ways of communicating with them, but they'd all be like these extra filtration layers that you just can't navigate your way through because you
Mm.
don't have like a pet shoulder rat.
Yeah, that's where the power comes from. The
You can
rat.
talk to someone who looks like kind of like the weird carny guy you were talking to, but it might not be him because you weren't really paying attention, and you've got no way of like telling.
I love that like Fiona comes up. And she's still got the Viking Book of Love. That's just floating around.
Yeah,
And she tries to talk to Pete and he's like, get away from me. I'm not supposed to talk to you or touch you.
yeah, I know, just fuck right off, and then
She's like, oh, isn't it great when he ignores me like that? To which Linda sees the book and suddenly gets furious because she knows what's happened.
yeah, woman, don't you're the reason the book's here.
Yeah. And I just love it because he's just blowing everyone off. The
Yeah.
bullies come into, they're like, they want payback for whatever they did to
Yeah,
their
he
dad,
thinks he's-
to the
yeah.
dad, because that's what they think they did. He did something to them, but he tells them to step off and that they
Just-
suggest mouthwash.
Yeah, just he's on the phone. He just holds the phone to his side, turns his head, doesn't know the rest of his body, and just puts these children down. And they don't do shit. And then Snapper comes in, and I mean, like, imagine what teachers are like with phones today. Imagine a teacher in 2000 coming into their class and there's a kid just on the fucking phone. And then imagine you're Snapper and you see this.
Oh yeah,
So
the rage contained in that face
It's-
as he's shaking,
not okay with this event.
and I love it because he's just like, read my mustache,
Yeah.
detention.
So Pibble, yeah, like he Pibble tells him to hang up the phone, and he's like, "Look, you're on 30K a year. Go away and don't bother me." And then like it's about time you need to be reading some Snapper mustache to know the shit you're about to cop for that.
Mm.
So Pibble winds up in detention.
Meanwhile, poor Pete has to get on with his day and wakes up and freaks out because he's got to find the carnival. To which Matron walks in with the biggest plate of breakfast I've ever seen.
Yeah, she's like doing that thing where she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna fix the problem by like fawning over him," which is a nice idea, but unfortunately, that's not Gribble.
No, and
So they got to drive to go to the carnival, and Matron's making him drive.
because she's like, maybe you should drive, and she's like, I know you hate when I drive,
It makes you angry.
and it's just like, okay, we're getting a picture here, and of course Pete doesn't know how to drive.
Yeah, no, it's 13. So it's just like lurch, stop, drive over a curb, and then the next shot's them like with a fucking huge line of goddamn traffic behind them, and people swearing at them and shit. And so they pull up at like the fucking real estate office, and Pete runs in and then calls Matron my love in a sort of naive attempt at looking like Gribble.
Yeah.
And then, Pibble's just walking around detention doing his phone business. And then, Snapper comes in and asks him if he's learned his lesson. This is like the coolest fucking, Gribble's been, is when he's Pibble. Because he's just, Snapper has a go and goes, "What have you learned?" He goes, "Oh, I've learned not to, pick fights with public servants, deluded in their own self-importance." And then just walks around Snapper.
Yeah, and Snapper's like shakes his head like he agrees, and then he's like, wait a second.
Yeah, wait.
I've been played.
Yeah, you just got like fucking snapped.
And then we go back to Pete trying to do Gribble's job.
Mm.
And he's on the phone, and obviously he's selling real estate.
Yeah.
And
Someone's asked
the
about a
property
house.
is shit.
Yeah.
To which like Pete says, I wouldn't let a dog live there. And stuff like,
Yeah, it's just, I wouldn't let a dog live there. And then like we get back to fucking, Pibble, and the bullies are like, "All right, we've got you this time." And they drag him into the toilets and, give him a swirly, and he comes out stunned and covered in toilet paper.
See, this would be good. I'd like resolution from this when he gets his own body back to punish his son. Because that was him.
I know, that's pretty funny. You gave your own dad a fucking, bully special.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of trouble lying your way out of the, most future shenanigans now. And so, like, Tony shows up at the fucking real estate office and, talks about, I want to just explore the idea of selling the lighthouse because, Pete's sad. And then, obviously fucking Greet starts talking Tony out of, doing any kind of selling. And then, toilet paper festooned Pibble shows up and starts saying that, no, I'm sad. You've got to sell it. But then, in the meantime, like, because Pibble's found where the actual fucking carnival is now, they both race off to, fucking deal with it.
I just love it because to anyone else, they're just seeing Gribble and Pete together.
Yeah. Just hanging out.
Just hanging out.
Yeah. We're going to the carnival together. Yes, I'm dressed in toilet paper. Why does that confuse you? And so, they drive to the carnival. And meanwhile, like, Matron is with, like, fucking Tony. And, she's supporting her king. She's, she's pressing that. She's getting a job done that Gribble's been trying to get done for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
She's already successfully manipulating Tony into selling the fucking lighthouse.
So they find the carnival and, like, they find the VR tent. And the
VR tent.
And the rat guy's there. And he's like, look, I'm not authorized to turn this on until the carnival starts. And it's like, bitch, what?
Yeah, I know. Because I was like, you're a carny, man. Like,
yeah. To which they pull out some money and be like, and he's like, oh, well, this is swaying me.
Yeah, he's like, oh, all right then. And so they get in and they fucking start playing VR, like Defender or whatever the shit. And, meanwhile, like, we cut back, Matron's fucking pressuring Tony, ever further into, signing. And then we cut back again. And this time it's like, Pibble and Greet having their fucking VR experience. And they're saying, this isn't working, because of course it's not working. And then the fucking carny goes, all right, let me just fiddle with it.
And he puts the rat down on the floor.
Yeah, and fiddles with it.
And just by, like, on this old school computer, just starts tapping away.
Fucking, types brainswap.bash or whatever the fuck,
To which the machine malfunctions just like before, which means the carny didn't fix shit.
Yeah. And then they swap and Pete's got his body back and he stumbles out with a somewhat confused looking Gribble.
And then the guy can't find his rat.
Yeah. And I knew immediately when the process of undoing the brain swap was just way too smooth. I was like, oh, okay, he swapped with the rat. And yeah. So now the guy can't find his rat because the rat's followed fucking Rat, Gribble, and Pete into the car and is sitting on the back seat while Rat, Gribble is sitting in the front seat doing a fairly good adult male rat impression. Just looking around confused,
He already, the funny thing is he has such a ratty face for someone with such a round face.
Yeah, he's able to crunch a lot of it up into a point, which is, is what you need as an Australian children's television actor.
So they get back and Pete's hurrying because he knows that Tony's signing away the lighthouse and it's too late. He's already signed it.
Yeah.
To which they go back home to tell them and Matron like is happy that Gribble's back, so she hugs him. Yeah. And she's like, look what I've done,
And then, Gribble just hisses at her.
And I love it because when they go back to the lighthouse, everyone's like appalled and aghast. And it's like, yeah, Tony, you didn't consult the rest of the family.
This is the other part that I was like, this is fucking thin, man. Like, after all of this, like, I get that it's like your son and everything, and that's a good leverage point, but it's literally just him.
Yeah.
And you just sold out the lighthouse from under everybody else.
And you're making everyone else miserable.
And I don't think, did you have another place to live in mind?
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to fucking all move in with Nell?
That's Nell, a show I'd like to see.
All right, Nell, time to return the favor. We're just going to be...
Also, where has Nell been? We haven't seen her.
Oh, God,
this new season's in shambles.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan. I don't like new Tony and new Nell, so...
Or Faye.
Yeah.
It's a trio of misfortune.
Yeah, it's all a bummer. And so, like, they,
Pete's like, I love it here too, because they're all like, I love this place. And then Tony's like, what? You literally said you didn't want to be here. To which he's like, oh, it's hard to explain, but, you know,
Yeah,
and he
and then-
explains basically the body switching off camera. They don't
Yeah.
show it.
It-
But it shows them racing back to the thing, and Tony's like, we'll get it back. This is under false pretenses. To which Faye's like, we're going to look like loonies. Who's going to believe us? Tony says, you're a twist now. Get used to it.
Yeah, that was a solid line. Where it's just like, we're gonna look like lunatics. It's like, yep, this is what you signed up for. I mean, you probably should have like remembered that when you saw the ghosts.
Yeah.
And like it was the second the contract actually got signed, I was like, oh cool, all right, I know where this is going. And yeah, they get to like the office.
Matron's freaked out.
Yeah. And look, justifiable.
He's chewing on the desks. He's chewing this, that, and the droppings. That's the best line.
Yeah, so Gribble's created a rat's nest in the corner of the real estate office and is violently defending it from Matron. And is by all reports, shitting everywhere. And so the family storm in to, you know, deal with the situation. They see Rat Gribble eating the contract, and they go, well, this is that. That's that problem solved. And then they just back out of the fucking real estate office. And it ends with just Rat Gribble sitting in a pile of like, you know, newspaper and torn up newspaper and droppings. And then the rat that actually has Gribble's brain in the corner going, help me. And then the episode ends. I'm betting that doesn't get addressed in the next episode.
Oh, no, absolutely. I just wish they left him as a rat for the rest of the series. I think
Or at
that'd be
least
hilarious.
like left him as to the start of the fucking next one, you know? Like, I don't know, maybe they figure out a way of getting the brain to swap by putting the two together and smacking them with the phone. You know, just anything, just something. Like, it's, you know, it's that thing of like the show hasn't been like what you might call a direct continuity, but there's been it hasn't been it hasn't been like Invader Zim where some episodes will just end with them being baloney and it doesn't matter because it's a 15-minute little fucking, you can just assume that something takes place within the gaps. Like there's, you know, there's been continuity. This season has continuity because the book's still there. It's not like it's suddenly the fucking Viking gramophone of love. You know, it's the book. The book that was in that other episode and the episode before that and the episode before that. So I'm hoping that Rat Gribble is a thing next episode.
That would be great.
Yeah, but
No, it's not going to happen.
I don't know.
He'll be back to normal. I hope he retains some rat-like qualities.
That would be great.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, like just do that.
And
Just,
occasionally, you know, like groom himself or like...
It's okay if you do stuff that indicates that, yeah, they just went to the fucking, they just drove to the carnival and were like, all right, look, you fucking lunatic. Maybe don't operate virtual reality in a tent. I think that's what we've learned from this is like, you don't, you know, that's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, all in all, the episode wasn't exactly what I'd call fucking stellar, but it's like, you know, it hung
It was
together.
coherent. It went from point A to point B.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like this was just one of those situations where I was just, from the start, I was disappointed it wasn't a VR really episode. You know, it was just kind of a body swap episode.
Yeah.
But like, you know, it hung together. It did stuff. I feel like the writers didn't have much in the idea of what like to do with Pete and Gribble's body as much as, you know, they did fucking Gribble and Pete's body because he had, and you know, that's the problem is if you've got a really clear defined idea for one, then, you know, the fact that you don't for the other really stands out. But, you know, it worked. It was what we might call just a very standard episode of Round the Twist. A kid got put in an adult's body, an adult got put in a kid's body because, you know, you didn't fucking properly, you didn't have your virtual reality running at the right frame rate. Please don't put Mac and me on while we're doing this.
I just noticed that Macamee's on Prime now. It's a grim day for humanity.
I don't know why they didn't like email us. You know, I feel like I should go. I have a Mac and me alert set up.
Face. He's just seen his first titty.
All right, you turn the I can't like the problem with the Mac and me kid's just looking at me. All right, he's like his eyes follow me. I can't think while that's happening. Okay, well, just for that, have you ever felt like this, Amber? Have you ever met a carny? When did you first use VR? Ever signed something you wish you hadn't? And the wackadoo question I don't expect anybody to answer, ever been in the wrong body?
Well, I mean, technically, yes.
No. Okay, ever met a carny?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a carny outside of a carnival?
No.
I know.
Fucking, where did they go?
I know.
They live in the stalls.
I mean, some of them do.
Yeah. like, yeah, I've met carnies because I've been to the to the
Yeah,
Echo,
the Echo and
and
stuff.
you know, they occasionally have like Carrara markets have carnies. Like they
Yeah.
have one or two stalls that are just the carnival style stalls.
Yeah, like the
Like,
throw a thing and
yeah,
get a
they're around. Like, I can't really remember any like memorable ones that like stood out as being having a story with them or anything.
yeah. Well, mine were just like there's this, the sucked in man because he was there 3 years in a row, and
See,
like yeah,
that's memorable.
like this was around, I was like late primary school, early, fucking high school. So it's like, I'm going there with my brother and my cousins, and this you can go on a zipper. It's still fun. They had rides, they had the big giant wavy slide
Mm,
and shit like that. That was, that's enjoyable. So it's like, yeah, you go to the fucking thing, you walk around, you go on some rides. It's like that's a day. That's a fun day for a fucking 12-year-old. And then there's just this dude, and he's there again, and he's in the same spot, and it's fucking crazy because like it was just you wouldn't think a guy that looks like a feral Dick Smith would be able to convince you to do anything, let alone part with money.
mm,
But it was just he had a real disarming like sort of just it was either cunningly deliberate or kind of like the way a sea cucumber can change color and shape, just sort of automatic. But he had this capacity to fucking wield the pity his situation would naturally fucking stimulate in you to get you to go, oh, all right, I'll throw a ball at a thing and see if I can get a fluffy thing. Sure,
yeah.
why not? It's a carnival. I mean, aside from that, I mean, I've only got like this is the crazy thing is because I know people who know carnies, and it's like because my housemate like manages like is like the manager at a warehouse, right? And so the thing you got to understand about like warehouse work is there'll be like a layer of human beings who like know what they're doing, and then a steady stream in and out of barely employable creatures that can just lift things up and put them down,
Yeah.
and sometimes are barely capable of managing that. And like one of the guys that worked there briefly was a carny. And the thing is, it was in the off season. And so he had to, take up these other jobs. Even though, like, if you just travel around with like a ride, you can actually make a surprising amount of money.
Mm,
Like, there's a lot of money in like some of this shit.
yeah.
But like, this guy was like one of those, like when a tradie first gets an apprenticeship and is getting like paid, but it's still not a huge amount of money, but it's more than they've ever
Yeah.
been there.
Yeah.
And so immediately they get into staggering debt to buy like an incredibly souped up fucking, sedan or some shit.
Yeah.
Or like Ute. This was like that, except just every year. Every year he'd spend 50 grand
Jesus.
on just stuff and things
Yeah.
and shit that he'd lose or destroy or break or have confiscated by the police. And then he'd have to, rather than do any of the shit that like his family would do of like, oh yeah, you set this much aside, you fucking spend this time to fucking get the, the ride fixed up. And then not only have you got like this functioning thing, but you've also got a very large growing savings account, because if you don't, if anything breaks and if the shit's not going, you're not earning. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like there's this whole fucking thing of like them going, all right, you do all this. And he was just like, rabba-da-boop-ba-doo, and just fucking every, and I was, because he said, how much money do you suppose he spends? Yeah, I was like, fuck, I don't know, a couple of grand. He's like, 50. Like, what? It's like, yeah, he's like, he'd earn a bit more than that.
Mm.
And, had family and stuff he could stay with when he was up in weird places. But then would just blow it. It's like, I don't even fucking know how you could live like that. And then he'd wind up, just going, all right, well, I got to go lift things up and put them down in a fucking shed. And, he'd frequently just show up like fucking hungover, eat nothing, and just drink energy drinks and not do that good a job at the putting things down.
That's the best part.
Yeah, him and the sucked in man are like my two fucking entries into like what is a strange, it was unusual back in the day.
Mm.
But like these days, it's just such an extra weird little, leftover thing, like traveling carnival. It sounds like, again, you say traveling carnival and my brain thinks of like fucking, gypsy wagons and the 1600s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and it still happens.
Yeah.
Still going on.
Nuts.
I know, like, and that's like that. These were people with rides, so shit that you can actually make money on.
Yeah.
Not like just a portable shed and some plushies you bought off eBay. Which is what some of them are, and that's just.
Yeah.
I don't think those guys make much of a living.
It can't possibly.
I think it just keeps them in meth and not near a school, is what I'm assuming is just what the situation's got to be there.
I'd believe so.
Because you got to imagine how, like, and this is something that's been stuck in my head ever since I saw the Gimp in Pulp Fiction. And just like, what has to happen to you to get there? Like at some point that Gimp was in a primary school. Like this was 1994 when I saw this fucking film. I was like, I was in year 6 or some shit, maybe year 5. So I'm just like, someone in my class might just one day be in a leather Gimp outfit in a chest in a rapist's dungeon. And I got no way of guessing.
No, you can't pick the Gimp.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we should make
left,
a TV.
Look to your right. One of these children will be a chest Gimp.
So we should have a TV show, Gimps and where they came from.
Yeah, better know a Gimp.
Yeah.
Like, because what the fuck? Like, how do you wind up just living in a chest? And that's, basically that, except you just having like...
people who are really into JRPGs and really like admired the mimics.
What if I just were basically a mimic? I live in a chest, and when people come near me, I grab them, and then they got to give me some money, and I let them go.
That's what I do in my haunted house. Gimp chests.
Jimbo's spook house.
What's so scary? Give us all your money.
When did you first use VR?
Oh, see, this is hard.
Yeah, see, I remember.
Mm.
So let's see. I was in year 6, which was year 1 was 1989. So year 6 was 1995. So yeah, because it was like, for some reason, if you had like 4 Lifesavers packets, you could go use the VR for free at like the Strathpine Mall. And it was those like fucking, you stood in the fucking booth, basically, and the headset was really big. And it was like the one with the pterodactyls were like swooping on you and shit. And like there was something, I don't know if it was something wrong with the speakers or something wrong with the game or what, but like if the bird gotcha, this voice line would play that went, "Birdie, hungry." And for some reason, like I think like the fucking, I don't know, proximal sound was fucked or something, or like, someone just hadn't turned the thing up right. So basically all the sounds were normal, and then the birdie hungry part was fucking deafening. like head shaking, like fuck. And so it became this whole fucking thing of like, in the game you're scooting about, my brother's over on one side of the fucking, ridiculous environment, and there's these like fucking Atari goddamn looking pterodons flying around. The whole thing did look like that, like fucking, oh god, what's that music video that's like
the one Dire Straits?
Dire Straits, yeah, that's it. Yeah, the
Money
whole
for
thing
Nothing?
the Money for Nothing. The whole thing did look like the Dire Straits Money for Nothing video.
Yeah.
And then your gun had like a little grey rock on the end of it. When you pulled the trigger, the rock would go, "Pee-pee." And then you had to wait until it reloaded, which it just did eventually, and took fucking forever. And so my brother's running around trying to shoot me, and I'm trying to shoot him, and then every now and then one of us just go, fuck, and the fucking pterodon would get you. And then we played that for like, an hour or so, and that was that.
I think, I can't really remember much. I believe it was something like one of those rides where you sit in and they put the headset on you and like the ride moves and stuff.
It was like, it's like a fucking wacky chair and you see like a roller coaster.
Yeah, something like that. Also, I do believe that Movie World did that because the Batman ride, when you go in the park, it's the left, and you used to go into Wayne Manor where they used to have the animatronic Batman and stuff, which was fucking cool. When they updated that, they changed it so you weren't, when you're sitting in the thing, you weren't just watching a screen. They put headsets on you.
When we went to it, it was just a screen.
Yeah.
And the Batman animatronic was real cheap.
It was so good, cool though. And now that's completely different. Now it's the Hall of Justice and other stuff.
Okay.
But Movie World isn't actually owned by Warner Brothers.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's just licensed.
Huh.
And the reason that the characters don't come out much is because it costs them a shit ton. Huh. Like if Bugs Bunny cost millions to bring out.
That's so funny.
That's why photos are like $50 to $80.
God almighty.
Yeah, and it's just dreary and sad because like it's not like
that's the only thing you've got.
I know. I know.
It's called Warner Brothers Movie World.
And like in modern days, most of the rides are completely down. Like you go there and like 3 rides will be inoperable. And it's just like, you've only got like 5.
I was going to say, I'd want my money back.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, fucking what the...
And their fast pass system costs $50 for one ride.
That's fucking insane.
I know.
I literally haven't been there since, I don't know, I think I went once.
There is
second time.
No reason to go there ever again. It is just a...
I'd rather go to Dreamworld, and that place has had rides that kill you.
Yeah, pretty much.
The amount of times I went on that fucking water donut.
Oh, I know. Me too.
Someone got rolled in and just crushed in the gears,
Oh.
which me and my brother would talk about every time we were there. We're like, man, God, imagine getting sucked into that shit. And then you're like, yeah, this thing's built to not do that. You're like, yeah, that's good.
Except, the maintenance doesn't keep up and other stuff. And
they cheap out on something.
That's scary. Yeah. So, yeah. That's what I think. Like, I can't recall any other sort of specific VR.
Yeah, well, when was the next time you used VR after that? Like, it's probably getting up into like, oh, yeah, I got the Oculus.
The ones you used to get with your phones before the...
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because the little mobile Google Cardboard and shit. Like,
yeah, the Samsung brought out a proper headset that you'd put your phone in, and it would like
do stuff.
Yeah, and that was actually fairly good.
Yeah, actually, yeah, honestly, because my brother had the Google Cardboard and like, it worked surprisingly well. Like these days, it's like, I mean, your phone's gonna be fucking hot by the end of it.
No, it was blistering.
Yeah, that was one of those times. It was like, it's still working, but it burns my finger to touch it. So it's got to be up around like between at least well past 60 degrees.
Oh, they ran around 80 to 120, and that being so close to my face makes me scared.
I mean, that's impressive for a mobile chip that it can like just be like trotting along at 120 and not just fucking explode.
I'm pretty sure it had bad repercussions for the phone. My performance dropped by 20% now. Oh, yeah, well, that's not great.
It's never going to charge properly. It's every now and then just deletes all your shit and sends weird messages on Facebook. Yeah, I think like, because that was that classic 90s virtual reality.
Yeah.
Which, ran at several frames a second. It was barely entertaining. I think, yeah, it was probably one of those dumb sit-down rides after that at some point, and then, yeah, like fucking Google Cardboard and, playing the Vive for the first time, I think,
at Comic-Con.
Yeah, Comic-Con that we were doing the setup for. That was fun, because then it's like, oh, yeah.
That was like the first big,
actually,
really advanced VR that we'd touched. Because like the Star Wars thing was magical.
Yeah, that was
like it was like you could have a lightsaber and you deflect stormtrooper blasts, and that was like a demo. That was like a tech demo.
The shooter one where you had like the stuff coming up in front of you and you blasted it with various guns and things. Yeah, I remember enjoying those.
Yeah, it's cool.
I just like, it's one of those ones where there's just, when Oculus started and it was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like fucking, there'll just be an open platform for VR. It's like, oh, that's good. And then it got bought by Facebook, and then suddenly there were like 3 separate platforms for VR.
Yeah.
And all of them are kind of like, you can get them to work on each other, but it's fiddly, and you need these like fucking bridging programs that add all this extra fucking hassle. And it's like, this is killing this.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
It's like, all right, I can kind of sideload something onto the fake Oculus environment that I can get to run through Steam that'll go onto my Windows fucking headset. And it's like,
I will buy a Sony VR like for the PS5 in a year to 2 years from now, because the thing is, I don't trust them to support it right now. Because the thing costs $1,000. It's a very good headset.
Yeah, I know. No, that's the crazy thing is, of all of them, Sony wound up fucking probably putting the best support in.
Yeah, like, they have games that are actual games.
Yeah, like fucking, Resident Evil 7 and shit.
Yeah, there's a Horizon VR game as well now. And like, I really like to play that. But yeah, $1,000 entry cost to something that Sony have a history of not supporting products.
Yeah.
Look at the Vita. Look at this dumb handheld they're bringing out now that it's not a handheld. It just streams locally to you. What? Excuse me?
Like the only
You realize I can do that with my existing phone, right, Sony?
Yeah, like again, if it were like an actual handheld that could play pared down versions of the games, you'd have something good. Because it's something I keep saying, if like Nintendo wanted to just a real quickie, cheapy fucking upgrade for the Switch, just come out with a new dock that's also a thing.
Yeah.
Has a a GPU in it, and then it goes, yeah, it'll play things, but you go, oh yeah, that's really cool. And you can then, stream it to the hand when you're at home, or you can play the reduced mode when you're not in error connection.
Exactly.
And it's like, that's brilliant. And then they release a fucking just literally like you can a tablet and a fucking telescopic controller you get off AliExpress, both of which you'd get for, you could get both for $100 and Moonlight game streaming or even their own fucking service. And you can perfectly function. I don't know what this is for.
It's not for anything.
It's just so mind-boggling.
It's just them. And the funny thing is,
I'm wondering how much it'll be, because I bet it'll be over $200.
Leaks were $150 US.
That's too expensive for what it is.
Considering it only streams.
Yeah.
Like, it does nothing else.
No,
it's like if they went, hey, we're bringing back Vita support and it plays Vita games and stuff or whatever. If it played actual physical standalone games.
You can download all the portable PSP games to it.
PS1
PSP,
games.
PS
Those
Vita,
PS1 games that you bought on your PS3 and we took away access and you can never have them again.
No,
Except unless you pay us a subscription service, then you get about 10 titles that we choose. Fuck you.
That was funny because I saw it and I thought, because I just was looking at like fucking Twitter in the morning when I was making my coffee, and then it's just like, on my phone, I'm just like, all right, I'm assuming that's some kind of a joke.
You'd think.
Yeah, and then it's like, no.
You'd think, but no.
I mean, it's got the fucking cool controllers. It's like, yeah, that's nice.
That's
it's
cool.
Not,
it's useless.
Yeah.
I can play the PS5 in my own home in another room.
Like you're competing with the Steam Deck and the the ROG and even the Switch,
Stuff
and that all of that does stuff.
Play games.
Yeah.
You don't need to be tethered to something. Ugh.
Ever signed something you wish you hadn't?
Oh. I don't know.
Oh, my first phone contract. I mean, that's an easy one.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Yeah. Phone contracts when we were younger were just literally made to screw you.
So bad.
Like they were hideous, chock full of hidden fees.
A minimum of 2 years and you can't get out.
Yeah, unless you wanted to pay an exorbitant amount of money.
The quote unquote cancellation fee, which was like
$2,000.
Oh yeah. And that was on top of if you were paying the phone back too.
Yeah, you had to pay that as well.
Yeah, there was you had to pay the phone off, and it's like, okay, and then you also got to pay the fuck you fee.
Yeah, because I remember being involved in a class action lawsuit with Optus, because everyone was just like, this is criminal. This is too far. And the way they did it always was buy our phone and get you a gift. They packaged them with things back in the day, because I got an Xbox 360 with my phone.
I mean, that's not bad. Like, that's the sad thing.
That's why I got it.
Get me. I'd be like, get a phone and a 360. It's like, fuck yeah. What's all that squiggles? Whatever. Just gotta write my name on this here paper.
Yeah, that was definitely a regret. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got like a video phone in 2003.
Woof.
Yeah.
Woof. Yeah, mine was one of the one of the early color ones. Oh God. You could take a photo. It had a camera phone, and you'd take a photo and not know what that photo was. It would just be blurred pixels.
It looks like an AI colorization of a Game Boy camera.
Oh God! Because I think it was like the pixels was like 200 by 120.
Yeah. No, it was. It's a number that doesn't compute these days.
Nowadays, like you get your handheld phone and you point it, and it takes. Some phones can take digital quality SLR, close to SLR photos.
4K.
Yeah. Back then, Jesus.
It was like 4. You didn't even get the K.
I went to the zoo. Did you?
Yeah. What the fuck is that? Did you go through a cubist phase?
Oh, God.
It sucked so much. And because these days, the contract that I'm on now, and I use contract loosely, is like $35 a month. Cancel any fucking time. Yeah. I get 30 or 100 gig or something of internet, which I've yet to fucking, go over. And then back then it was like, you can receive some text messages. If someone sends you a video message, it's because they hate you. And
you'd have to pay to receive it.
Yeah. No, that was the crazy.
Wild.
I know, the more I think about that, the more it's like, how did anybody get away with that? You know, like that's a nuts thing that you had to pay to get shit. You know, send it as well. Like,
Yeah.
not like, oh yeah, you send for free and then someone's got to pay if they
No.
want to read your fucking
You
message.
pay to send it, and they pay to receive it.
Yeah.
And then you had all the phone scams. Well, not scams, but they may as well have been scams. There were things on like TV, which will be like, send us, a text and you'll get a ringtone, but then we'll like charge you a subscription service. Or the ones that came up that you'd send for jokes, and they'd send you jokes.
Oh, fuck, I forgot about all those. Yeah, you'd see them advertised at like fucking midnight and shit.
Yeah.
And it was like, dial a joke and
Shitloads of ads on MTV for those sorts of things, because my friend had Foxtel and I remember seeing them all the time. Crazy Frog was huge.
It's better. Like, I need young people to understand this. It's better.
Yeah.
Don't fucking like, there's scams now. I know that. There's bad things now. Better doesn't mean perfect. I want to stress that.
Yeah.
But I need you to understand that, like, it all sucked all the time.
The scams now are scams. Scams back then were perfectly legal and served to you in magazines, TV, everywhere.
You were just allowed.
Yeah.
Just allowed to trick someone into pushing the, take my money all the time button.
Oh, God.
I mean, you can at least fight when your kid fucking buys $1,000 worth of some fucking nonsense on Google Play.
Yeah.
Hey. I'm angry just remembering it now.
Yeah, it was a shit time.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be the one for a lot of people, although I do know I was never in the income bracket. Like, I remember in 2001, right? I was living in West End and just high all the time. And like filthy and gross and, just wearing like almost fucking Ricky from Trailer Park Boys level of clothing. Of
Excellent.
Just one outfit that was slowly decomposing around me. And I'll never forget in this state being, freshly fucking baked as shit walking through West End. And just two nicely dressed young people go, hey, would you like a pre-approved American Express card?
Woof.
Just being like, no. I mean, like, because I was like, are you serious? Like,
yeah.
No,
they would give it to anyone.
Oh, yeah. And I'm like, no. I'm not saying, are you serious as in I'm interested. I'm saying, are you serious as in, are you fucking insane? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I know that I would get in serious trouble with this,
Yeah.
Like, and you're here just grabbing, again, people you wouldn't trust to look after a pair of shoes. Just keep an eye on them for 5 minutes while I go into the no shoes place. You wouldn't have trusted me with that. And here's people going, hey, yeah, let's give this dude. And then, it turning out years later as, oh yeah, it turns out we turned debt into like this like fucking product that we sold to people. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. You were basically farming.
It's such a ridiculous industry because you literally everyone has a credit score. The more credit you get and you pay it off, your score increases. Now, there's ways to find out this credit score, but most of it in any meaningful way to get that information you need to pay for.
It's so weird.
Which is just batshit insane.
Considering how much it impacts your life.
Yes. And it's just, you're exactly right. It just turned into the cycle of just, this is a monetary product that we can push on people.
Oh, that's literally what happened. So basically the idea is, right, because the world is fucked. Say you owe, a company X amount for the money you actually borrowed, and then the interest on top of that. And the interest on top of that is considered a profit. So you can sell the debt and the expected interest as a product, because then the person who sells it might sell it for like, I don't know, a little less of the profit. So they're getting paid off, but they're getting something.
Yeah.
And then it's the other person's fucking problem to get the rest of the money back to make theirs.
Yeah.
And like, that was what the whole, first global financial crisis was. Companies had worked out that you could just take these debt obligations. They're called collateralized debt obligations. Companies would like literally just cut them up. That's not a bird. That's a gecko.
Oh.
Yes, a gecko lives in your air conditioner.
Okay, cool.
Would cut these things up, smush them together into just random. So basically you'd be getting like one bundle of random debts from just around the fucking place.
Yeah.
The company that was supposed to check these debts and make sure that they were like from sane people who could pay them back and not like feral West End idiots would normally go, yeah, that's a good debt. That's like maybe a business that earns money has like, made some capital expenditures and bought some things for the business. They're going to pay that back. that's a sensible purchase. And instead, like, because they turned these things into products they could sell, everyone was running around giving fucking credit cards to stoners. And then the companies that were supposed to go, well, that's not a good idea giving a credit card to a stoner because he might just not pay that back. And would just go, yeah, that seems like a good idea. And then they'd value that fucking debt at being, you know, worth something. And then I wouldn't pay it back. And then the whole world collapsed.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. So, like, you know, don't get into weird content. Don't. Like, a lot of things these days don't really need contracts, you know?
No.
Just don't sign them. Have you ever been in the wrong body?
Yes. Obviously.
That was funny because, like, I was at the end of it, I was just thinking, oh, what's the wacky one we could do? I was like, oh, yeah, of course. That's perfect. That lines up just to a fucking T. You ever had a gribble head explode out of your neck, your fuck knuckles at home? You know, tell us about that. You ever have a sweaty, curly Australian man just suddenly be you? All right, well, with that, now we got the...
oh, I forgot about the fucking chuds.
We got the chuds.
No.
Okay, from a Keep It Classy fan. Ever been in a race? Yes, by proxy. Jesus
Excuse
Christ.
me?
We are off to a flying start. Yes, comma, by proxy. Fuck me.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the technical answer there is no, but okay, we'll
Let it slide.
Yeah, I'm gonna fucking suspend that disbelief. Let's go on a journey. I had an older brother who owned a 98 Honda Civic hatchback. He fancied himself a nighttime street racer, so he went through the effort of stripping the car bare to lighten it. One night, whilst babysitting me, my brother and his friend took me for a ride. I sat in the non-existent back seat. Great.
Oh.
During the drive, they reached a stop sign and my brother began to rev the engine. The car next to us took the hint and revved their engine. The light turned green and the race began. My older brother's friend was a bit of a goon, so when my brother hit a pretty sharp turn, his goonish friend slammed his body against the door. For almost 2 seconds, the car ran on its right 2 wheels. All the while, I am sitting on a metal with no seatbelt in the back, ready for a high-speed death to happen. We were fine, but my brother lost the race. All right, yeah, that counts.
Yeah.
I think you're not by proxy, but like
You're in the fucking car.
without your consent. You were a ballast.
Yeah.
Ever been suddenly very popular? Yep. I had the brother with the loud racing car, so when he picked me up from school, I looked popular. Teenagers were easier to impress back then. Ever had something strange happen with your penis? I'm going to extend this topic to a friend's penis. Okay. Apologies in advance. This is a bit of a gross one. All right, look, that. I was fishing. Like, no man asks another man if he's ever had something strange happen to his penis. If he's not I'm not expecting a fun story.
No.
You know, I'm like, oh yeah, one time flowers came out of it. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. We all know that. Once, during an overnight stay with friends, we all sat up late and watched a porno together. For those of you that are on the younger side, this was much more difficult back then. You had to know someone who had a porno VHS tape. Yeah. Tangent aside, we all believed ourselves to be tight friends. I don't like that wording. We decided to let it all out and just agree to show each other our knobs. Okay. So in a dark, narrow room, 4 teenagers laid out their floppers in front of each other. We all became concerned-looking Jules, our tallest friend in both respect. What? Oh, looking at Jules? Okay. Jules looked at each of us with similar concern. None of us were circumcised, but we were all hard. Unlike the rest of us, Jules's turtle head wouldn't pop out of its shell all the way. We told him that was a bit odd. With more medical fascination than anything else, we watched Jules pull his foreskin all the way back. Jules was a less than hygienic dude. Oh, God. But what we didn't know is that he had gone years without completely cleaning his penis. Once fully pulled back, the room was filled with a smell that was hard to handle, and his penis looked like dried, cracked earth. We demanded that he go into the shower and clean up, with tweezers if necessary.
Jesus.
He came back almost 2 hours later with a thumbs up and a changed life. We all swore to keep this story a secret. However, considering Jules went on to be the sex machine of our friends group in high school, I don't weep for the guy's embarrassing story. If anything, he owes us. What if a girl had seen it before us? Yeah, no, like, seriously.
Yeah. You did that dude a favor. Like, oh.
Because, like, you know, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And that will get around to school.
Yeah. I'll get around everywhere.
It's getting around the internet now. Old crust penis.
You're making the pizza pie.
Too much parmesan.
Bleh.
Like,
I can smell it.
Hi, Twists, and greetings from the sleeper train between Vienna and Zurich.
Cool.
Okay, I guess we're talking to some kind of Prussian count. Have you ever been in a race? Two spring to mind. I was once in a 3-legged race at my school sports day, where I won gold by firmly marching to the finish line while my partner was half dragged along behind me. The second time was a cross-country running session at high school where one of the bullies tripped over right in front of me, and I semi-accidentally kicked him in the ribs as I tried to hop over him. It looked like enough of an accident that nobody ever beat me up or got me in trouble. Ever suddenly been really popular? During the 2021 lockdown, I had to compile a list of all the local council leaders in the UK as part of my then job. Doing this, I learned that a lot of them have shit logos. I work as a graphic designer, and thought ranking them all would be a good way to kill time. Yes, I have been diagnosed. That's good. I drifted away from the project, but later that year, after moving to Seattle, I had nowhere to spend Thanksgiving, so bored, I wrote 15,000 words over the weekend and put it out on Medium. It turns out that giving every local newspaper reporter in Britain something easy to write about is a good way to get publicity, and I woke up the next morning, I was living 8 hours behind in the UK, to find my phone exploding with notifications. A few things happened. I got some actual paid writing work out of it, a commissioned logo ranking piece, and a byline in the local government chronicle. I spent a week getting up at 4 a.m. to do interviews about it for British radio stations, and I met my now girlfriend. The latter was because she sent me a Twitter DM recommending another rankings article about the patterns on train seats. That person's been diagnosed. And it turned out it was another British expat living in Vancouver. Fascinating. A year and a bit later, we're now living together. It's a pretty funny story when people ask how we met. That is, yeah, that's a doozy. But it was a hell of a thing to try and explain to a Canadian border control when we first started dating. Ever had a problem with your penis? Everything's fine in reality, but I have a recurring dream of being naked in public and unable to put on my clothes like while everyone points and laughs. That sounds like a trauma dream, but this has never happened in real life. Lastly, if Gabe's upset at a lack of poetry, here's one I wrote a few years ago that I'm not hugely proud of. It's about a nightclub for skeletons.
Fuck yes.
All the best, and keep up the good work. I have been haunted by the Paul Jennings story about gnome faces for years, and it's good to know that I'm not going mad. Yeah, the gnome faces. The gnome face one's always fucking lingered with me. Hello again, Amber and Gabe. Happy belated birthdays to you both.
Thanks.
As I have previously mentioned in the I Don't Feel story, my wife has had motion sickness all her life. When she was about 16, she was on a deep-sea charter fishing boat with her aunt and her grandmother. They had been fishing for a while when my wife realized she needed to pee. The boat had an onboard toilet, so she closed herself in to do her business. The sea was very rough that day, and the bathroom had no fans or windows and was uncomfortably warm. My wife had been handling her motion sickness well that day, but that changed as soon as she sat down. The boat swayed over and over, and she hadn't even finished using the bathroom before she vomited all over the floor. She hurried up and finished and washed her hands and mouth before leaving. Her aunt asked how her trip to the bathroom went, to which she responded that she threw up. Her aunt asked if she had cleaned it up. My wife responded that she hadn't because she needed to get back out into the fresh air. This obviously did not go well with her aunt, who yelled at her that she needed to clean up her mess. My wife went back in and tried to clean up, only to hurl again. Only to be able to put paper towels over her mess by this point, my wife ran back out and hung her head over the railing to try and alleviate her overwhelming nausea. Her aunt went over to her and asked if the mess was cleaned. My wife replied that she didn't and that she threw up again. The aunt started screaming at my wife about how irresponsible she was for leaving the mess and that she should be able to hold it long enough to clean it up. My wife's grandmother butted in and volunteered to clean up the mess, which kept the argument from getting any worse. I do like the idea of, like, this girl constantly being made to go in to clean up the vomit and then just vomiting again on it.
Yeah.
Until, like, it's just this weird cubicle of vomit.
Ugh.
The next story also involves a boat, but has a fish instead of more profuse vomiting.
Well, that's good.
The fish is vomiting.
That's bad.
When my wife was about 14, she was out on a small boat where one of the various rivers of Virginia met the Chesapeake Bay. She, her great-uncle, and one of her great-uncle's friends went out for early morning fishing. Normally, they would catch moderately sized fish like croaker, spot, or flounder. This day was much different. At one point, my wife was reeling in what she thought was one of the above fish, only for the reeling to get more and more difficult. Before too long, the fishing rod started to bow and everyone was getting excited. Then a very large silhouette appeared in the murky water. What my wife had on her line was about a third as long as the boat they were in, and as it rose from the depths, they saw more details. It was brass-colored and covered in armor, and its body resembled that of a shark. For a minute, the three of them were scared and confused by the strange fish, and as it started thrashing near the surface, my wife recognized it as a sturgeon. My wife's great uncle had never seen one in the area, and for good reason. Not only are they incredibly uncommon in Virginia, sturgeon keep to fresh water instead of the salt or brackish water in which they were at the time. As my wife was reeling the fish in, she and the other two were trying to figure out what the hell they were going to do with this thing. They didn't want to kill it or keep it in case there were some laws about it, so they decided to release it once they got the hook out. That involved getting the monster on board. Just as it reached the surface and the three of them were reaching down for it, the line snapped. As though nothing had happened, it slowly sank back into the murk. All on board looked at one another to try wordlessly to confirm what had just happened. Sadly, nothing else interesting came up on the line that day. The only poem I wrote that's worth a mention is one of the history of Japan that I wrote in middle school during my weeaboo phase. I was so proud of it that I even posted it to my Gaia Online account page back when that was kind of a big thing.
Whoa. Blast from the past. Holy shit.
Oh, good. I have pasted the text of the poem at the bottom of the email. While I haven't really written any poetry since then, I've written a great deal of prose, and I want to preface this next part by admitting that my wife and I are massive Star Wars nerds. In July of 2021, I was inspired to write a fantasy version of The Phantom Menace. I decided to see how far I could go before I got bored with the idea and moved on to something else like I always did. Fast forward to today, and not only have I finished all 9 episodes, but Rogue One as well. In total, I have written close to 400,000 words and continue to write between 500 and 1,000 every weekday. One of the motivations to keep going is that I want to use my work as a bedtime story series for my daughter when she's old enough. I also use my writing as a coping mechanism for my anxiety. I post my writing on a couple of fanfiction sites and can be found by Googling The Saga of the Skywalkers, a fantasy retelling by Silas Kaiser. I'll link to the collection at the bottom of the email as well. Okay, oh man, that's a long fucking poem. I'm going to skip reading that poem because it goes forever. I'm going to keep that. Fair. I'm going to keep that for like we'll come back to that in case of emergencies.
Right.
I apologize for the second email in quick succession, but my wife reminded me of 2 penis stories.
Whoa.
That's
a sentence.
Just fantastic. When I was a young teenager, I, like many men, used shampoo as an all-purpose soap. I had run out of my normal shampoo halfway through my shower and grabbed a bottle of something new my mother had bought for me. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it had aloe in it. Unfortunately, as it turned out, I was extremely allergic to it, and my dick swelled up to the point where the shaft was twice as thick as the head. That's fucking great, because I wish we had a picture of that, because I've wanted to see, like, a fucking head shaft dick for, like, ages, you know, because, like...
The chosen one.
Yeah. Bring balance to the chode. I was too embarrassed to mention anything to my parents, so I suffered in painful silence until the swelling had abated sometime the next day. This was not the end of the ordeal, however. For the next 2 weeks or so, every bit of the skin where the soap had touched around my crotch dried up, cracked, and peeled away, leaving behind incredibly painfully sensitive new skin that left by a popped blister. Yeah. I ended up having to adopt a new walking gait until everything healed. This is, regrettably, not the only horrific penile trauma I have experienced. Excellent. How did you forget these? How did you remember the time my dick became a huge blister and I couldn't walk?
Hey, trauma gets blocked out, yeah.
You don't need to remember the dick explosion.
No.
Oh, Jesus. We have a 12-year-old goose named Buddy. He is by far our most accident-prone bird, having at one point lost a massive piece of his upper beak to forces unknown. It grew back, albeit crooked, but the story is about a different kind of pecker. One day in spring, my wife was walking around the farm. The geese have been frisky as it was their breeding season, and my wife didn't think much about it. Later that day, my wife noticed something hanging out of Buddy's underside. At first, she thought it was a bit of intestine, since it was fleshy and squiggly. Feeling the worst, she took Buddy into the vet's office, which she worked at the time. The exotic vet examined him and determined it was only Buddy's penis. While not as bad as a bit of herniated bowel, this was still not good. His penis had prolapsed and could no longer retract as it was supposed to. The vet's first idea was to just shove it back in. This worked for about an hour before it unceremoniously flopped back out. The vet said they had to take more drastic measures, specifically suturing the penis to the inside of the cloaca. In addition to the suturing, he would have to avoid any excitement for the next few weeks. Unfortunately, there was nowhere on the farm he'd be out of sight of his mate. I don't know how to keep a goose from getting horny. You know, someone said, hey, keep the goose from getting horny. Lost.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin on that one. Hey, keep your goose from getting horny. So he ended up having to stay in the vet's office until he healed. They brought in a kiddie pool for him, and he ended up staying in one of the dog kennels. Like, he might be horny for fucking kiddie pools, you don't know. Buddy is incredibly loud, and during his stay, his honking was audible all the way in the lobby and at the front of the building. Despite his kind nature, he also terrified a small child who was specifically brought in to see him with a spread wing display. Yeah, you sure you weren't bringing the kid in to go, hey, check out this weird goose dick? Hey, want to see the goose dick? After 2 weeks, Buddy was released and has since fully recovered, but his penis's function is questionable at best. He may have fathered another gosling, but it's also possible that the gosling was a product of goose cuckoldry. Oh, okay. Greetings, twisting merfishes. Last episode, Amber asked for further details on the old lady who climbed out of a bin to wave a crucifix at me.
Yes! I'm excited.
And assure me she was Christian. I can fill in some details as to why deeply Christian bin muppets were not odd enough to be remarkable in that particular hellhole. At that point, I was living in a not great, but by no means the worst bit of Edinburgh, where the local culture revolved around 3 noble pillars of alcoholism, heroin, and failed aspirations.
Woof.
Think train spotting, but with pseudo-middle-class pretensions. The sort of place where people have Gruyere cheese to mask the taste of junk and are conscientious enough about smoking it from less than shiny side of the tinfoil because the other side has chemicals. My flat was behind a supermarket which kept its bins in the same alley. People like to rake through and often climb into these bins in search of wondrous treasures like expired egg sandwiches and moldy vegetables. Furnishing your house from skips and the dump is much more normal in Scotland than other places I've lived, but the crowd who frequented these bins were mainly full of rotting food were an odd bunch. For many of them, the bins seemed to be more than just a source of entertainment and nourishment, and had transcended into a sort of social club, but with more rats, and with the Keno machines replaced by games of Find the Rancid Ham. As well as the evangelical dumpster granny, the bins provided a few other memorable interactions over the years. On the streets by the alley's entrance, I once witnessed someone comprehensively lose a fight with a bus shelter. Nah. The alley itself was home to urinating drunks, masturbating hobos, and the world's least competent drug dealer. His method was to approach potential clients and ask if they wanted weed or acid. Potential clients included complete strangers, lampposts, and occasionally empty space. For some unfathomable reason, an American exchange student I knew did once buy, quote, weed from him. Surprising no one, it was not weed, but rather some hellish melange of spice and bath salts which had an amusing effect on the buyer. I love the idea of buying weed and you just get like, stuff that's clearly not even a plant.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Another highlight was watching a gentleman attempt to chat up 2 women. Choosing to do so in that particular alley would have been questionable enough, but in this case, the women were in a bin looking for goodies while the would-be seducer urinated against it. Excellent. I did not hang around to see the result, but can only hope it led to a madcap romantic comedy. Enough exposure to the crazy and you filter it out. Yeah, that's true. And so the deeply Christian bin muppet didn't come over as any more than slightly unusual. Fucking evangelical bin muppet. Greetings, Twisted Sister and Twisted Sis-Sir. It's Ian again, and I have felt like this. I'll start with one I'm mad didn't make it into the last episode because my Gmail just didn't send the damn thing. Boating. I've been on several boats, but the important one isn't any of those. I was working a job as an electrician at the time and got assigned a job through the union. This job was with a company that was currently redoing a bunch of the wiring under the Seattle waterfront piers, which meant that our schedule for work depended on the tide, and we'd be doing all our work at like 11 p.m. The way we got there was to show up at the base site, load tools into a bunch of tiny outboard dinghies, and motor our way over to the piers where we got on floating platforms for 6 hours of wiring work. At the end of my last week there, we'd just finished up for the morning at like 5 a.m. and got back to the dinghy to zoom back to base. It being water, we just took a straight line toward the furthest spit of land that we'd have to turn at, putting us into calm but open water. We had made it about halfway there when I nearly got the piss scared out of me by an orca whale breaching off the port side about 20 feet away from us like goddamn Free Willy, making the guy at the motor freak out and almost crashes into one of the other boats. I mean, yeah. Especially now that the orca have decided to attack boats.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand, they are incredibly intelligent. Like, for anyone bored at home, look up the law of the tongue. It was like an actual contract that humans and orcas had in, like, New South Wales. Next, penis weirdness.
Fantastic.
Now, I don't have much funny for the first 2 questions, but I do have one for the penis question. See, this is why I asked the penis question. When I was in high school, I stayed over one night at my then-girlfriend's house because her parents were out of town. I shan't elaborate beyond the obvious happened for the night, as you don't need to read the smut for the podcast, though God knows what other listeners have sent in. The real story begins the next morning. I groggily woke to what I thought was a morning BJ until I felt the sudden and wild sensation of my urethra inflating, which woke me up real quick. Huh. Do you know those magazines like Vogue or Cosmo or whatever that have 10 amazing sex tips that'll blow his mind and destroy his penis articles, and all of them are rub a grapefruit on his cock and pleasure his balls with fork tines? Well, my girlfriend read one of those and wanted to try out a trick on me. She slid a small straw into my dick and blown, partially inflating my bladder with air and making me suddenly have to pee, which, given the air in there, resulted in my cock farting out for the entire piss. We decided after that we should warn each other before trying any other great tips in the future. That's fucking insane. That is fucking insane. Like one time, a lady friend of mine was right in the process of starting to give me a blowjob, and because we were both, Simpsons obsessives, I thought it'd be funny to say, "Open wide for some soccer!" And she laughed and almost blew like an air bubble down my dick.
Yes,
and I've been terrified of that ever since. And the idea of someone getting a straw in there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm good.
Greetings, Gabenort. Iranian dude from ADHD here. Call me Pooh if you must. All right.
I feel like you want to be called Pooh, otherwise you wouldn't say that.
Long-time Gabe fan since a week after the final LDO upload. First-time mailer because I thought the third world ass wouldn't be too funny or would veer towards more tragic, but some of the other mailers you've had on this show mentioning no Mexico or Scotland inspired me to also embarrass myself. Ever been suddenly really popular? Yes. So I don't know how your not third world country education systems work over there, but just counting the grades I had passed up to that point from autumn to summer, I would have been in 9th grade, I suppose. For reference, this is the grade where at the end of it you decide what subject you would like to get into a bit deeper. The first year of high school, I think. So I had just moved into this new school, and it turns out the vice principal used to be mates with my dad. Well, I say mates. My dad mentioned he used to bully the shit out of him at one point, but they didn't take it personally back then, but I digress. Having my back warm thanks to the power of who you know is in an incredibly corrupt regime, I could basically go hog wild at that school and very quickly rose to power and popularity for being a complete cockhead, and then became the ringleader of my class and near the end the whole school. I will give you an example of some of the shit I pulled. Whistling during namaz, a filthy Muslim dogshit waste of time ceremony of praying 3 times a day. Taking gasoline and filling an empty window cleaner spray bottle with it, making essentially a makeshift flamethrower, and incinerating my fellow classmates' eyebrows and the area behind the sports field.
Jesus Christ.
Borrowing an entire pack of tie wraps from Dad, who is a god-tier electrical engineer, and taking it to school and attaching my classmates and to each other, their chairs, their bags and their chairs, and semi-locking their bikes. I'm pretty sure after this one, it wasn't just popularity that kept people from ratting me out, and they probably started to fear me a bit since I just basically handcuffed the school for fun. And my magnum opus, taking a naked electrical plug, plugging in the class socket, grabbing the wires coming out of it, and connecting the two to make a spark for the enjoyment of the boys. And sending one of them to turn the fuse again and doing it again and again. This time, however, things didn't go so well, and the vice principal guy I mentioned came into class to make everyone piss off to the yard and smelled burning wires. Instantly came toward me and sniffed my hand. Needless to say, the jigger's up, and he strongly pushed me aside and searched my bag. After seeing the naked plug, he just forgot all semblance of who this kid is and began beating the shit out of me with my own bag. Some of the hits landed on my balls. You had that coming, I will say. While yelling genuine insults. He yelled something along the lines of, "Who gives a shit if you had killed yourself being such a moron, but anyone who would have tried to kill you back would have been killed too. Pull you back would have been killed too." While his face was turning red. Luckily for me, the upcoming class was the last day, and spending the meantime sitting on the first stairs next to the VP office after the bell rang, I decided to just quietly piss off home and pray to the cunt god I knew since the age of 12 either didn't exist or is a cruel bastard who's eating popcorn and watching us suffering. The next day, a teacher, for like social studies, or, what in Iran is called family definition, threw me out of the class because throughout the school year, I didn't do a single line of homework. The VP, upon seeing me, got that spark in his eyes again, and I could only think to myself, here we fucking go. And it was indeed a bit of bullshit. He made the whole thing, this is enough, and I'm being expelled. Thus I had to resort to crocodile tears, crying and saying that I would change. It took the entire day, and I had to do a fucking filthy namaz for him to show him change or whatever. As you can probably imagine, the next day I put all this behind me. I was yelling, "Castle Ram," to my friend who was disrespecting me and rammed into him while he was at his desk with another desk at full power, knocking the ever-loving shit out of him into the ground. It's a wonder I didn't break his skull. So yeah, I didn't learn shit. Ever have something strange happen to your penis? Well, this is more of a masturbation story, so feel free to disqualify it. It's a penis story, it's fine. I tell it goes back many moons to when I was 13 or 14, I think, and I was early into jacking it. As such, rather inexperienced in doing so. One day when I was going to be alone for the whole day, I made an appointment for a masturbation session and wondered to myself, how do I make this more enjoyable? Now, at the time, I only did it with shampoo, so on occasion I decided to try an expensive ass mint cooling shampoo that made your head and body chill upon using it. Now, while my younger self imagined having his willy cold would make him enjoy the fucking thing more is beyond me. Probably has something to do with being a massive nerd and thinking organic matter works similarly to electronics or some shit. Long story short, I'm not exactly sure how long I spent trying to come, but at the very least, after half an hour of putting all the elbow grease I could muster into the job, it didn't happen. What did happen, however, was a pretty unimaginable burning all over. Its skin was pretty red, and I'm pretty sure some shampoo got into the eye and started just feeling on fire from the inside too. The side effect of this disastrous wanking continued for the next 2 weeks of suffering, but at least I didn't have to go out much since it was summer. Now, this was my third or fourth time masturbating up to this point, and after this fucking beloved memory, I didn't attempt another go for at least 6 months. My apologies for the long email. I hope it was worth the read, and feel free to shit on my grammar and shit, but do bear in mind I've never actually gone to any kind of actual English class and learned English from watching cartoons, and not taught in any way how to write an email like this to any capacity. Take care, cunts, and upload more. I mean, yeah, if it happens to your dick, then it's a penis story. It's okay if it's a masturbation story.
The key thing is penis.
If you get icy hot down your fucking your eye, yeah, that's a thing. Hello, roundheads. Rob the Axeman again.
Oh, Lord. He's back and he's got axes.
I took the family axe down from the axe pile. I still think about that. So I'm 10 and I'm at school. I've got fairly dainty skin. That's weird for an axling. And I'm used to itches, but between recess and lunch and class, there was one in my pants that was particularly persistent. I stick it out until the bell rings for lunch and mentally weigh up whether this merits taking a trip to the school toilets. This wasn't a decision to make lightly. I don't know what it is about my hometown, but both in primary and secondary, the bathrooms were dimly lit, covered in brown tiles, the floors were constantly wet, and smelt faintly of piss. This was when some turd burglars hadn't deliberately clogged the toilets. Meaning that there was, now a chance to see stray shit on the floor. It was no wonder that I developed iron bladder and colon control, given this is what I had to contend with for 6 hours a day for 13 years. Over the PA, they announced we'd be allowed to go to the nearby Oval during lunch. So being a nice summer day, I decided, fuck that, and went there with my friends and played guns or something. I'm assuming you were allowed onto the Oval so you could, shit. Just shit in the Oval now. Toilets are just a pool. By the time the teachers decided to start bringing us all back, my groin was on fire and I really needed to look about this. About as we walked through the gate, the bell went and we needed to get to class. The combined idea of being punished for being late and going to the shit pits was greater than the fire in my pants, so I hurried back. Now, there was no way I'd be able to convince the teacher to let me out during class to check this. Saying it outright would be social suicide, even if my teacher might have been pliable to the idea to let me go to the toilets. That kind of lying and misdirection weren't tools a 10-year-old me had in his armory. Finally, the bell rings, and I get to go home and fix the situation in private. Let's wind back the clock to me being about 8. My parents made the decision one winter to allow the dogs to sleep inside at night. This was a heinous mistake that touched off a decade-long war to expunge the house of fleas, and has me with strong opinions about letting animals inside ever since. Fast forward about 2 years. Fleas are still there, like the Danes rolling up on Wessex. Each summer brought a new boatload of these bastards as the weather conditions hit optimal breeding condition and numbers resurged. Yeah, they go dormant. Like, they can just be in dirt. And then the heat comes and they just wake up.
That's fucked.
Yeah. So I go to the bathroom at home and drop my pants to find the cause of this hot, fresh hell. Peeling back my foreskin and finding a mass of viscous white fluid that young, ignorant me thought was pus. As I wipe it away with some toilet paper, I find the cause for my glowing red bell end. A goddamn flea. Somehow one of these little pricks had found their way in my underwear and was repeatedly biting me, to which my prepubescent body had the reaction of, drown it with semen. And if I know where I found it at that age, though, you can't, stuff can come out the dick, it doesn't mean it's loaded. You just got, your dick's just like, oh yeah, here's some goo. Something's biting the penis, drown it in goo. Joke's on you, biting thing. That's what you're about to get drowned in. After I cleaned things up, I spent a half hour on the toilet letting my battered glands breathe and steadily stop itching. I got no superpowers out of this ordeal. I would not want the superpowers that would come from dick bite flea. I'm not sure what the fucking, what you're getting out of that. Your dick does whatever a flea can. Jump. Oh, you could probably fly like Thor throwing the hammer, but it's like only your dick, so your dick's got to pull you along. Wing, crunk, but then like you'd need a strong shaft for that. That's a particularly fucked up story I've never told anyone. Perhaps I, with the time, a leech managed to bite me in the general groin area. I love the idea, Axe Rob, that everything on Earth just wants to taste your delicious dick blood.
That's very funny.
Yeah, like that's something we've discovered. Is Axe Rob's dick blood is the best. So if you got like, you know, some pet mosquitoes or leeches, or you need to, you know, you need some kind of like blood for magical purposes, you know, you need like some prime blood. Axe Rob dick blood. Best shit. Just ask the fleas. All right, well, those were all about as grim as I was expecting. I mean, you know, straw down the dick.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Don't like that.
Yeah, I know. Like fucking Cosmo shit is like, just imagine a deranged magazine written by incels. Just I didn't think you've seen a penis. Like, yeah, guys love to just grip their balls real hard. It's like, you want to ask a question or two before you do that. Maybe don't. Maybe leave the house. So if you would like to send us your deeply troubling confessions and various sad writings, the email address is ihavefeltlikethis@yahoo.com. So remember, if you want us to make fun of you on the internet, ihavefeltlikethis@yahoo.com. And the questions for the episode You Am I are, ever met a carny? And I'll expand that to, are you a carny? Because you never know.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious now. I want first-hand carny information, but it's another one of those subcultures. It's very hard to get a straight answer, you know, from outsiders. They go, hey, what's being a carny like? To a carny, you're just going to get a bunch of bullshit. You know, they're going to fib. Tell you a bunch of stuff. So, ever met a carny, or are you a carny? When did you first use VR? Ever signed something you wish you hadn't? And ever been in the wrong body? Remember, answer those questions, send it to ihavefeltlikethis@yahoo.com, all lowercase. I'm Gabriel Twist, who is, I think, good for penis stories for a little while. You know, probably don't need to hear about like a shaft bigger than the glands for a little while. You can find me at Gabriel on Guard at Twitter. And with me is Amber Twist, who you'll be able to find on Twitter, but I never can for some baffling fucking reason.
At Ambercules.
Ambercules. Yeah, I got to go to my For You tab to see your tweets, even though I follow you.
Yay, Twitter.
I can't go to following. It's fucking baffling. All right, but that's us for the day, and we will be back when we can next stomach to watch an episode of Round the Twist that doesn't have a child's penis in it.
Bye.
Bye.